All right, welcome to Good Choices. So, I'm making a choice this morning to continue on with these with the LPIC. So, we're at configuring Grub legacy menu entries and settings. Grub legacy menu entries and settings are stored in the file /boot/grub/menu.lst. This is a simple text file with a list of commands and parameters, which can be edited directly with your favorite text editor. Let's take a look at it on my lab. So I've got to pull that up quick. Alright, so we've got that file on my lab. We've got a list here. The list is of commands and parameters. So let's take a look at the first command. You can see we've got a bunch of commented outlines. So here's the first line that is not commented out. We've got this command here, title, and then the parameter is the version of operating system, and then the version of kernel. We've also got root, kernel, and init rd, and then we've got that repeated a bunch of times. I'm not sure what's going on there. It's just the same information. Um, Not quite verbatim. There are some differences there. So I'm not sure. It says that it's the Debian Automagic kernels list. So yeah, let's read more about it. Lines starting with the pound sign are considered comments, and blank lines are ignored. Each menu entry has at least 3 commands. The first one, title, sets the title of the operating system on the menu screen. The second one, root, tells grub legacy which device or partition to boot from. The third entry, kernel, specifies the full path to the kernel image that should be loaded when the corresponding entry is selected. Note that this path is relative to the device specified on the root parameter. A simple example follows. So, yep. It's .lst, so like it's its own syntax. It's not like a Python or a C file or anything. It's a .lst file, so it's got its own syntax, and the syntax is the same as for like Python for commenting out characters, and then it's got this like space syntax where you've got title, root, and kernel. And there's another option we saw in my lab, init rd. Unlike Grub 2, in Grub Legacy, both disks and partitions are numbered from 0. So the command root and then round paren, yeah, or brace, or no, bracket, round bracket, HD0, comma 0, and round bracket will set the boot partition as the first partition. Round bracket. Now these round brackets are just to show what the first partition, the symbol that represents the first partition, which in this case is 0. Usually it's a 1 in the we've seen the /etc/ or the for the disk naming conventions. Usually the first partition is represented with the 1 character, but here it's with 0. So unlike in Grub 2, in Grub Legacy, both disk and partitions are numbered from 0. Yep, that's the main takeaway from this reading. This section of the reading. So the command root hd0, 0 will set the root partition as the first partition 0 of the first disk, hd0. So that's quite a bit different syntax than what we're used to. We're used to syntax being hd, a, b, c, or d, all the way through as many disks as you have, and then the partition being 1 through however many partitions you have. Here in grub legacy, they start from 0. I'm not sure if that's the case in grub 2. Hopefully we'll find out later as we read more. You can omit the root statement if you specify the boot device before the path on the kernel command. The syntax is the same, so kernel hd0, 0 slash vm linuz root equals dev slash hda1 is equivalent. So it's equivalent to root, and then so you can put it all on the same line. You can omit the root statement if you specify the boot device before the path on the kernel command. So you can, instead of saying that the root is here and then using another command for the kernel, you can put it all on the same line by prepending the root location of the root file system before the kernel command. This will load the file vm linuz, so a compressed version of the kernel, from the root directory, which is represented with a slash, of the first partition of the first disk, hd00. So we can see we've got that legacy grub syntax here, and then we've got the syntax that we're more familiar with here, that uses a here, where 0 is used here, and uses 1 here, where 0 is used here, to represent the same thing. The parameter root equals slash dev slash hda1 after the kernel file tells the Linux kernel which partition should be used as the root file system. This is a Linux kernel parameter, not a grub legacy command. Okay, so it gets confusing because you got to use both kinds of syntax, the syntax that starts with the 0 and the syntax that starts with the 1. The reason you need to do that is because you need to feed a kernel parameter to the kernel command, the syntax here that starts with kernel, and kernel parameters use this syntax that starts with a and that starts with 1. Grub legacy commands, however, start with 0. So you've got two different kinds of syntax written in two different kinds of ways to represent the same thing. Confusing as all heck. Hopefully they change that in grub 2. Note, to learn more about kernel parameters, we can see this guide here. So this is a good link because this is the full documentation. You know what we're reading here, and it's important to understand this. We're reading a set of learning materials written by a company whose product is like clout, laurels. You know, you pay this company, you use the learning materials on here to purchase a attempt at an exam that will qualify you to be taken seriously and make money from employers. So that's a lot different than this, which is the full official, they don't care here whether or not you can pass a test. All they care about with this is, do you know what we're doing? So if you really want to be an expert, this is where you go. But for me, you know, I want, it's frustrating because, like, yeah, I want to be an expert. I want to know about the rapid IO subsystem and the Dallas 1 wire bus and pulse width modulation and industrial IO. I'm interested in all this, like the DRM-TGRA NVIDIA Tegra GPU and display driver, but it's like this is where we're getting into. It's just like there's too much to learn, and like even with getting a certification, there's too much to learn. Like the point of a certification is to test you on things that are that are useful, that you can use, and that it matters for somebody to know that you're certified in those things. So it's like, how much does the ram oops dash panic logger matter? Like, when is that even used? It's the logger that writes its logs to RAM before the system crashes. Like, okay, do I need to modify that logger? Do I need to set up parameters in that logger? Do I need to? It's like, now in this case, this is a pretty small piece of documentation here, and even altogether, this documentation doesn't look too bad. Well, here we go. Here's this problem with concurrency. So the unreliable guide to locking. So it's like, this is the stuff where, like, if you really want to be an expert and you want to be on the news because you hacked an iPhone or did something extraordinary in the world of tech, this is where you live. This is what you do. You read all of this. You don't worry about certifications, that sort of thing. You just dive into this sort of stuff, and then you play around. Like, you try to do things based on what you learned with this. That things like this, anyone who came away with this sort of certification wouldn't be able to do. And, like, that's why you get famous. That's why you went further than other people went, because it's not the same kind of game. For me, like, I'm trying to have a lifestyle, or I'm trying to build a career. I'm doing all that basic playing by the rules stuff. So I'm focusing on this. I'm trying to get a certification. I'm trying to get jobs, and I'm not worried about this, as of now, because yes, I realize this is the real stuff, but anyway, I'm kind of on a tangent here. Apologize for that. I just want to say that I can't emphasize enough, how important. First, now this is called a primary source. So primary sources. If you know anything about critical thinking, primary sources are really important to know about, to read. So this is a primary source. This is more, it's a learning material for a certification that may or may not be useful and may or may not qualify you to be an expert. This will qualify you to be an expert, in my opinion. But there's no, it's like you go into a job interview, you say, I read all the doc at kernel.org. It's like, okay, great, wonderful. What did you do with that? Like, okay, if you made the news because you hacked something or you built some amazing thing, okay, you're fine. But like, you know, is this going to lead to that? Like with this, you can say, I have this cert, and this cert proves that I have this knowledge, and somebody can say, okay, well, that knowledge is valuable. We will pay you for that knowledge. Whereas here, it's like, I have all this knowledge, but I have no proof of the depth or the competency of this knowledge. I can talk about mono TM binary kernel support for Linux, but there's no way for you to actually vet my ability to configure Linux to automatically execute mono-based .NET binaries. Like, maybe you can make a test, maybe you can have an expert like listen to me talk, but that takes time. That's hard to do. Whereas if I just say I have an LPIC-1, that is much easier to scale, to have that to manage when it comes time, as opposed to testing someone on their ability to add entries to the RC/RC local script to be run at system startup. Which, I mean, honestly, like, that might be a part of, like, LPIC training at some point, especially, like, the LPIC-4. So the LPIC, once you're all the way through the LPIC-4, you're probably gonna go through most of this primary source here. But, these are not training materials. These are primary documentation sources. So it's not a single coherent document. These learning materials are. All right, so that's kind of my tangent on that. I just wanted to be kind of clear in my own mind. As I said, and I made a video on this, I'm always kind of struggling to justify the time I spend studying because, if you have nothing to show for it, you have nothing to show for it. So I want to be working on things that really give me that value back, if it just so happens that I fail it, or if it just so happens that or if I do pass it. I want to make good decisions about what I do with my time. I think that's really important. And as I mentioned, I could just dive into the primary source, walk away, maybe, a bigger expert with knowledge that people who passed the LPIC wouldn't have, and maybe I could use that knowledge to accomplish something noteworthy that could prove my expertise. Or I could just keep focusing on this and get that certification, have it be done in a single coherent set of learning materials, and use my time officially and get a lot of value back for those good choices. All right, so let's continue. You may need to specify the location of the initial RAM disk image for the operating system with the init_rd parameter. The full path to the file can be specified like in the kernel parameter, and you can also specify a device or partition before the path. For example, so here's talking about that fourth one on my home lab. So this is the location of the initial RAM disk image for the operating system. Here it's init_rd.img. Let's see what it is on my home lab. So it's quite a bit different on my home lab. There are multiple entries on my home lab. It looks like the versions are different, except when they're not. Um, so Grub Legacy has a modular design where modules, usually stored as .mod files in /boot/grub/i386-pc, can be loaded to add extra features like support for unusual hardware, file systems, or new compression algorithms. Modules are loaded using the module command followed by the full path to the corresponding .mod file. Keep in mind that, like kernels and init.rd images, so these are initial RAM directory, or initial RAM disk images. This path is relative to the device specified in the root command. The example below will load the module 915 resolution needed to correctly set the frame buffer resolution on systems with Intel 600 or 900 series video chipsets. So the command is module, and then the path to that module. Let's see if I've got any module commands on my home lab. Looks like I do not. Do I have any that are commented out? I do not. Alright, so chain loading other operating systems. Grub Legacy can be used to load unsupported operating systems like Windows using a process called chain loading. Grub Legacy is loaded first when the corresponding option. Oh, I'm a little bit quiet on my. Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, hopefully it's not too bad. I'm a little bit quiet on my audio, but hopefully it's not too bad. And then there is this extension here that I recommend, Volume Master. You can crank it up. Alright, so Grub Legacy can be used to load unsupported operating systems like Windows using a process called chain loading. Grub Legacy is loaded first, and when the corresponding option is selected, the bootloader for the desired system is loaded. A typical entry for chain loading Windows would look like the one before. So we've got a comment here, load Windows, title, root, make active, chain load +1 boot. This is actually kind of a scary thing for me because, as I said, when you're learning things online, your time is really valuable. You could be learning a lot of different things. So, I could be working on leak code problems. I could be reading this primary source for Linux. I could be working on a project of my own, AI designed, networks, AI network engineering. I could be going for a different kind of cert, the Juniper AI Mist cert. So it's like, I wish they wouldn't have this spend so much time on the legacy version, and I wish when they load Windows they wouldn't talk about Windows XP, because it just makes this seem really outdated, and that's concerning, because it's like, I want this to be relevant and here and now, and I want to get a job for having this. So it's like, if it were 10 years ago, maybe this would get me a job, but I'm worried that let's ask ChatGPT about this. So how valuable? Now ChatGPT is out of date. So this is only from 2021 and is now 2023. But it does say that the certification is a well-recognized and respected certification for individuals seeking to validate their skills and knowledge in Linux administration and usage. So, yeah. Okay, so ultimately, while the LPIC LPIC-1 certification can be valuable. It's crucial to consider your career goals, the demand for Linux professionals in your desired job market, and the specific requirements of potential employers. So, and okay, so I'm gonna say my desired job market is remote work. How much will the LPIC-1 certification empower me to work in this market? So it's beneficial for remote work in the Linux field, but it'll depend on several factors. So um, okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It makes sense. Let me ask. What? Okay. Um, what else can I do to improve uh my um opportunities in finding remote positions, or is earning the LPIC-1 the best use of my time? Okay, so it's definitely valuable. So I could earn practical experience. I feel like I've been doing that. Um, I mean, contributing to open source. Definitely a good suggestion. Freelance. That's a good suggestion as well. Uh, Pick up other certs. I mean, I'm planning to do that after I get this LPIC. I want to get a like a cloud cert of some kind, like maybe Azure, because I think of all of these three, like Azure might grow the most, or maybe AWS because it's the one that's like out there right now, not GCP. Yeah, this could be a big one too, because I feel like it's different. This is probably where I'm really lacking. I need to go to like um DevCon and like conferences. I really need to do that. This is probably where I'm doing the best right now with this YouTube channel. I think this is a good thing. Could use some improvement here too, because there are platforms and websites that specifically cater. But yeah, as mentioned up here, having an LPIC demonstrates my expertise. It gives me a competitive advantage against those that don't have the LPIC. It's an industry recognized, globally recognized and respected Linux certification, um, and um, yeah, it shows that I am deserving of credibility and trust and assurance that I had the ability to spend my time making good choices and getting that cert, as opposed to doing other things that are not so valuable um, when it comes to uh, working in technology. All right. So, yep, um, so let's take a look at this Windows chain loading again, and we'll make note of this chain load plus one, and hopefully we'll read more about that. So let us walk through each parameter as before. Um, Root, starting now this so we've got the disk HD0, So it's the first disk on the machine, comma, in the partition 1. So this is actually the second partition, since it starts with 0 in the grub syntax. So as before, this specifies the device and partition where the bootloader for the operating system we wish to load is located. In this example, the second partition of the first disk. Okay, so the make active command we've got here will set a flag indicating that this is an active partition. This only works on DOS primary partitions. Then we've got the chain load +1 command, which tells grub to load the first sector of the boot partition. This is where bootloaders are usually located. And finally, we've got the boot command, which will run the bootloader and load the corresponding operating system. Alright, so let's try to get through all these exercises. I might only be able to get through some of them. So we start with all of these learning materials that I've seen so far. First it's the guided exercises, then it's the explorational exercises. So the first guided exercise is, what is the default location for the grub2 configuration file? That's a good question, and you know, if I had remembered everything I read, I would know that just right off the top of my head, but I do not remember anything I read. So I don't know. So let me think about where it would need to be. I mean, it would need to be accessible by the, you know, so it would be either in the EFI, or sorry, the ESP, or the /boot. So I think my answer for this is /boot/EFI. Let's see if that's correct. So I was right with /boot, but the answer is /boot/grub/grub.cfg. So I'm gonna use ChatGPT here. So act as my LPIC-1 tutor. Use the Socratic method to teach me the answer to this question. Okay.
Alright, let's explore this concept together. To start, can you tell me what grub2 stands for and what role it plays in a Linux-based operating system?
Yeah, so Grand Unified Bootloader. It is used to select which operating system to boot up to and to pass options and to configure kernel options.
That's correct. Grub is indeed the Grand Unified Bootloader, and its second version is commonly referred to as grub2. Now, as per your understanding, where would such an important configuration file typically reside in a Linux file system? What directory is generally used for storing system configuration files?
Okay, so here's /boot. This is for system configuration files.
You're close. The boot directory is indeed where the Linux kernel and bootloader files like grub are typically stored. However, the main configuration files for many Linux programs are often found elsewhere. Have you heard of a directory that's more specifically used for system-wide configuration files in Linux?
I thought it was this, right?
Exactly. The etc directory is used to store system-wide configuration files in Linux. Now, considering grub2 is a significant system-wide utility, where do you think its configuration file would be located within this etc directory? Any guesses?
I mean, that's my guess, but I know it's wrong. And it was such a dumb guess that
You're on the right track.
the
The grub2 configuration file is indeed located in the etc directory. However, the specific path is slightly different. Do you know what the full path might be if it's not etc grub2?
I mean, the full path is ls etc grub. Oh, sorry, not etc. See, it's messing me up. It's not meant to be like that. Yeah, it's forward slash it's slash boot slash grub dot cfg. But I'll play along.
Close, but not quite. The full path of the grub2 configuration file is etc. default
No,
grub.
it's not.
The etc. default directory is typically used to store configuration files for scripts under the etc. init D directory. These scripts control the startup, shutdown, and management of daemons and other server processes. The grub file in etc. default is the default configuration file for the grub2 bootloader.
What the heck? Yes,
Does this
it
help clarify things
is.
for you?
Okay. What? Okay, so there's two. There's two of them. There's boot grub.cfg, and there's etc default grub. Okay. Uh, what? So I'm gonna say the answer in the LPIC-1 learning materials is boot grub.cfg, but on my home Ubuntu Linux lab, I do see / etc default grub. Which is the real answer and why?
I see, that's an excellent question. Let's clarify this. In reality, both paths are important, but they serve different purposes. Etc. default grub. This file contains parameters that control how grub itself behaves. It's where you would set options that change how grub operates, rather than what happens when a specific kernel is booted. Boot grub. CFG. This is the main grub configuration file, and this is likely what your LPIC-1 material was referring to.
Okay.
This file contains the menu entries that are displayed at boot time, and the instructions that grub carries out when a particular menu entry is selected. What's important to note is that on many systems, you don't edit boot grub CFG directly. Instead, you change settings in other files, such as etc. default grubber files in etc. grub D, and then these are used to generate boot grub CFG by running the command update grub. Does this help clarify the distinction?
Okay, so the question, and this is a horrible question. What is the default configuration for the grub2 configuration file? So the file at /boot/grub/grub.cfg is the main grub configuration file. Okay, so it's not that bad of a question because that is the grub configuration file. A grub configuration file exists at /etc/default/grub, and that file contains parameters that control how grub behaves. It's where you would set options that change how grub operates rather than what happens when a specific kernel is booted. So okay, and what's important to note is that on many systems you don't edit. Oh, that's even worse. /boot/grub/grub.cfg directly. Instead, you change settings in other files such as /etc/default/grub or files in /etc/grub.d, and then these are used to generate /boot/grub/grub.cfg by running the command update.grub. Oh my god, this is so bad. So, okay, so here's what's going on. First of all, these AI models hallucinate. They make up things out of thin air that aren't true. Is that what is happening here? I don't know. I do know that file etc default grub exists on my machine. I do not know if anything else said about that file by GPT in this case is true. The other thing I know is that the LPIC materials gave the answer boot grub.cfg to this question, what is the default location for the grub2 configuration file? Now, if it is the case that the file at etc default grub, the changes in that are added to the file at boot grub.cfg, this is kind of a bad question because like there are many grub2 configuration files, so there is not a single grub2 configuration file with a single location. There's multiple files. So an answer could be etc default grub, and that would be a right answer. Now there is a main configuration file according to the output here at boot grub.cfg, but it tests you on how little do you know, because if you don't know about all the files associated with configuring grub2, you're going to get this question right. But like if you know about the system and you know what the files are for, it's just a bad, confusing question. So like it's a question designed to get you to know less, which is annoying. Okay, but let's take a look at what these files look like on my system. So the one potentially hallucinated by the AI does look like it's the case here. So we've got if you change this file, then run update grub afterwards to update the main file according to the AI, boot grub.cfg. Yep. Okay, so let's take a look at the main file next. Okay, so the main file looks quite a bit different than that file. A lot more complicated. Now here's the worst part. This is so bad. So it's saying the file at boot grub.cfg is automatically generated by grub mk cfg using templates from etc grub.d and settings from etc default grub. So what is the default location for the grub2 file? Boot grub.cfg, period. There's your answer. What file do you modify to change the grub2 configuration? Not the configuration file. You modify the etc default grub file. You modify the etc grub.d file. Those are templates. And then you run the command update -grub, and that is what changes the boot grub.cfg file. So yes, okay, fair. The default location for the grub2 configuration file is grub.cfg, but the location for files that you modify to change the grub2 configuration are elsewhere. Alright, so that was really frustrating and annoying. So let's move on to the next question. What are the steps needed to change okay. Actually, it goes over that. Okay, good. Needed to change the settings for the grub2 file. So I should know that now. To make your changes to the okay, perfect. Make your changes to the file /etc/default/default/grub, then update the configuration with update -grub. Perfect. Okay, so I learned something because this frustration led me to think about this more, and that, hey, they're one step ahead of me. So awesome. This is great. All right, next question. Into which file should custom grub to menu entries be added? So that would be that second file we saw in my home lab, right? Because that's where you have the templates. So I forget what that file's called. Let's try to figure it out. So it'd be /etc/grub.d is my answer. Nope, I was wrong. Well, you know what? I was right. Um, so so if the question were into which directory should custom grub to entries be added, and that is a better question. Oh no, no, it's not a better question. Um, when you add custom to or custom grub to menu entries, there's a standardized file name that you need to either add if it's not all on there already or edit. And the standardized name of that file is 40 underscore custom. But I was on the right track with /etc/grub.d. I just didn't know the file naming convention for custom grub to menu entries. All right, where are the menu entries for grub legacy stored? I don't know. I honestly have no clue at all. I'm just gonna look at the answer. Oh, I should have known that from the reading. So it's /boot/grub/menu.lst. That's kind of frustrating. If I just thought about it, I might have been able to figure it out, or use the tutor. I'm not really using the tutor right now, which is poor decision making. From a grub to or grub legacy menu, how can you enter the grub shell? So I'm going to use the tutor for this.
Sure, I'd be happy to guide you using the Socratic method. Let's start with the fundamentals. Could you tell me what grub stands for and what it is used for in the Linux ecosystem?
Yes. Grub stands for Grand Unified Bootloader, and it is used to select and pass options to operating systems and enable them to start.
That's correct. Now, considering that grub is a bootloader, it will present you with a menu where you can select which operating system or kernel you want to boot into, right? But what if you want to interact with grub directly, maybe to debug or modify some boot parameters? What might you need to access?
I don't know, like the asterisk?
It appears that your response may have been cut off or blank. I'll reiterate the question. Considering the context of using grub as a bootloader to select operating systems or kernels to boot into, what kind of interface might you need to access if you want to interact with grub directly, for example, to debug or modify some boot parameters?
So some kind of editing interface such as Vi, Nano, or Emacs.
You're on the right track. When it comes to interacting directly with grub, you'd indeed need a command line interface. However, grub itself provides such an interface for directly interacting with it. Can you recall what it's called?
No, I cannot.
No problem. The interface you can use to interact directly with grub is called the grub shell. Now, let's get back to your original question. From a grub to or grub legacy menu, how can you enter this grub shell?
You can enter it by pressing special characters.
That's correct. When you are presented with the grub menu, there are certain keys that you can press to access different functionalities. Now, do you remember which specific key or key combination allows you to access the grub shell?
I do not.
No problem, that's why we're here. From the grub menu, you can access the grub shell by pressing C. This will launch a command line interface where you can interact directly with grub.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So I guess it's not that hard to remember. If you want to enter a command line or a CLI, which is the same thing as a shell, you type the letter C. Yes. You press C if you want a command line interface. Alright, so explorational exercises are next. I think I can finish it up. I'm almost at the 1 hour mark, so it's a good length. So yeah, I'm gonna pause, come back, and I should be able to finish up those explorational exercises in this one video. So I will be back soon. Alright, I'm back. Let's finish this up. No time to waste. So the first thing I like to do is go back through the guided exercises and just remember it from memory. So the default location for the grub2 configuration file, that's at /boot/grub/grub.cfg. The steps to change the settings for grub2, you modify the file at /etc/default/grub, and then you do the command update-grub, I believe. Into which file should custom grub2 menu entries be added? They should be added into the I don't remember file. And then number 4, what are the menu entries? Where are the menu entries for grub legacy stored? They are stored in a file named .lst, but I don't remember anything else. Number 5, from a grub2 or grub legacy menu, how can you enter the grub shell? You can press C. Alright, so let's look at the answers again for the ones I don't remember. Here it is. /etc/grub.d/40_custom. And then for the second one, I was right about the .lst. They're stored in /boot/grub/menu.lst. Alright, explorational exercises. Imagine a user configuring grub legacy to boot from the second partition of the first disk. So that would be, this is grub legacy files, so it would be partition number 1 of disk 0. He writes the following custom menu entry. However, the system will not boot. What is wrong? So we can see everything looks good except for this root command. He was correct in using the number 0 for the first disk, but he was incorrect in using the number 2 for the second disk. He got it confused that the number 0 represents the first disk, and it's chronological from there. Next question. Imagine you have a disk identified as /dev/sda with multiple partitions. Which command can be used to find out which is the boot partition on the system? My answer for that is going to be lsblk. Let's see what the real answer is. So I was wrong. The answer is use fdisk-l /dev/fda or wherever your disk is. The boot partition will be marked with an asterisk. So that's a problem. I need to remember that. Kind of concerned that I didn't remember that. Fdisk requires sudo. Just about anything in And then now I don't have an asterisk on mine, which is interesting. So maybe that's the case just for a biosystem. All right. So next question: which command can be used to find out the UUID of a partition? I don't know. I'm guessing it's some kind of fdisk command. No, wrong. Use ls-la/dev/disk/by-uuid and look for the UUID that points to the partition. I am worried that I'm not going to remember any of this when it comes to the test. This seems like the kind of stuff where route memorization through like Anki flashcards is the only way to go. Alright, so number 4, consider the following entry for grub2. Change it so the system will boot from a disk with UUID, with that UUID. I don't know how to do that. Wow, okay. I think you can change this default OS here with it. Let me see what the answer is. No, I was wrong. Um you need to change the set root statement. Instead of specifying a disk in a partition, as we see here with that legacy syntax, tell grub to search for the partition with the desired UUID, as we see here. So dash dash set equals root, and then dash dash fs dash UUID, and then enter that in there. Alright, 2 more questions left. I need to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Alright, welcome back. We've just got 2 more questions to get through here. Let me go back and review all of them. The default location for the grub configuration file is at /boot/grub/grub.cfg. The steps needed to change the configuration, to change the settings for grub2, are modifying the file at /etc/default/grub, and then doing the update-grub command, into which file should custom grub2 menu entries be added. So it should be added into the /etc/grub/40_custom file, where are menu entries for grub legacy stored, and they're stored in /boot/grub or /menu.lst. And then from a grub2 or legacy grub menu, how can you enter a grub shell? You can press C. Alright, so the default location is /boot/grub/grub.cfg. Got that right. The steps needed are changing /etc/default/grub, and then updating with update-grub. Got that right. The file custom grub2 memory for custom grub2 menu entries is /etc/grub.d. So I got that one wrong. It's not /grub, it's /grub.d /40_custom. I did get the file name correct though. And then what are the menu entries? Where are the menu entries for grub legacy stored? And that's in /boot/grub/menu.lst. Got that one right as well. And then the last one was a freebie. Alright, explorational exercises. The first one was a freebie. You just got to change the 2 to a 1. The second one, that one was hard. So it's sudo fdisk-l /dev/sda. I think that was the answer. Let's check it. So fdisk l slash dev slash SDA. Got that one right. Next command, which command can be used to find out the UUID of a partition? So this one, I don't really remember. I think it's an ls command, ls dash, I don't remember. I believe it's an ls command of some kind. So ls dash la slash dev slash disk by UUID. Alright, next question. Consider the following entry for grub2. Change it, so we can change it by having root, instead of this, after this root equals here, we can have something else, which I don't remember, unfortunately. Okay, so it'd be dash dash set equals root, as opposed to root equals and then that, and then dash dash fs dash UUID, and then the UUID after a space. Alright, so how can you set grub2 to wait for 10 seconds before booting the default menu entry? So you can pass it the time parameter, the wait parameter, I mean. Or sorry, you can add the parameter grub underscore timeout equals 10 to etc dash etc dash default dash grub. Didn't get that one right. Last question from grub legacy shell. What are the commands to install grub to the first partition of the disk? I do not know these commands, which is concerning. The commands are root, and then that grub syntax. So open paren hd1. Oh, you know what? This was an easy question, because it's what are the commands to install grub to the first partition of the second disk? So all you need to know is that legacy syntax starts with 0, and we're talking about the second disk, which is specified with a 1, and the first partition, which is specified with a 0. So really easy commands: root, open paren hd1, comma 0, close paren, and then setup, open paren hd1, close paren. Alright, that's it for the questions. Unfortunately, those aren't really sticking in my mind, so I don't know, I might need to go back at some point and just review all the questions, but here's the summary. In this lesson, we learned what is a bootloader, the differences between grub legacy and grub2, what is a boot partition and what are its contents, how to install grub legacy and grub2, how to configure grub legacy and grub2, how to add custom menu entries to grub legacy and grub2, how to interact with the menu screen and console of grub legacy and grub2, how to boot a system from a grub legacy or grub2 shell or rescue shell. The following commands were discussed in this lesson: grub-install, update-grub, grub-mk cfig. Alright, so that's it for this lesson. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one, Managing Shared Libraries.